I'm excited to be a 2019 Echo and Green Black Male Achievement Fellow. I'm really, really excited to be a 2019 Echo and Green Black Male Achievement Fellow. And why? Not just because out of 3,000 applications, half of those folks make it to the search and selection committee. Half of those, not even half of those folks, maybe 64 of those folks make it to finalists. And of those 64, 32 are selected. So out of 3,000, to be one of the 32 is an awesome, awesome accomplishment. But I'm also reminded that 6 years ago, before I took on the title of a fellow or civic leader or executive director, I was an inmate. 6 summers ago, to this date, I was an inmate in Kane County Correctional Center. I was a high school dropout. I was on the floor, literally on the floor of my life. I had 2 sons that were looking to me, and I knew that I could do more. I just knew I could. I knew I could be in this space 6 years ago, even though I didn't know this space was here, but I knew there was a space out here for me. And so I'm really, really grateful to be a Black Male Achievement Fellow. Because once before I was an inmate, and I think the walk that I know that I'm on now is really inspiring folks in a lot of the different spaces that they're in. So I'm grateful for that. So I'm not much of a data guy, but I'm going to go through some points just to add context. And if you don't know, our city is a beautiful city, but we have some challenges. So the Chicago Tribune reported in April, it's changed since then, unfortunately, that 309 people had been killed in Chicago as an incident of homicide, which was 58 fewer than what it was in 2018. 297 of these homicides that were reported in April were products of gun violence, were tragedies of gun violence. So gun violence is more so an epidemic. It's really a culture that's in the city of Chicago that we constantly grapple with within community. Here's a map of the south of Chicago. I live here, me and my wife, my sons. Our organization is right in the smack dab of that community. And while crime happens throughout our city, it's predominantly concentrated in the South and West Side communities. Go a step further, we have this culture of gun violence. It's been going on for years. We see it happening in the same neighborhoods oftentimes. And then we see it happening to the same people oftentimes. The data that you're looking at here is something that was taken over a year. It's time. But you can see here that in terms of demographics, victims of gun violence predominantly are Black, predominantly are young in age, between the early 20s and 40s, and predominantly are male. So young Black men are being killed in the city of Chicago regularly. I represent them. I am them. I stand before you as one of them, hoping, changing, moving, that this just way of life. It's just the way of life it is, that it changes. I have 3 boys that I'm raising. And so it's near and dear to me that we get this right. So you have this culture of violence, all right? It's going on. It's been going on. You have happening in the same place. You have the demographics of those that are victims, which oftentimes are those that are perpetrators, even though we have a homicide clearance rate of about 10% in the city of Chicago. So very rarely are homicides solved. But to add context too, that so this violence is happening in communities, and on the outside of that, there's lack of opportunity. Great Cities Institute is a research arm of the University of Illinois at Chicago, published a report back in 2016 that talks about out of school and out of work young adults and teens. And you'll see in 2014, it talks about 16 and 19-year-olds being jobless. We see the percentages there. Then as we kind of go older, we see the same thing happening between 20 and 24-year-olds. Not as much, but still a significant amount of folks that are jobless, out of work. And if you look as well, a lot of those folks have close proximity with the juvenile justice system. Now, I'm not here to rain on the parade and not tell the full story of what's happening in the city of Chicago, but I just want to let you know, me as just one individual, there's a lot of organizations in Chicago that are working towards it, but what I, as one leader of an organization, is up against. And I was a part of the problem. Ayanna Pressley says those that are most impacted by the problem should be the closest to the solutions. So I made up in my mind 6 years ago that I wasn't going to no longer be a part of the problem, but I was going to be a part of the solution. That everything that I had in me, the audacity and the tenacity and the courageousness to go out and be in community and do all those different things, I was going to use it and foster it in a different way. And 6 years ago, I made up in my mind, and I have not wavered in that mission, not one day. No matter how challenging it's been, no matter how long the journey seems to where I gotta go, I've never wavered in that mission. And so in 2016, I founded Chasing23 Youth Empowerment Group with a founding mission to build respect and unity among young men in the city of Chicago, right? I'm of the belief that the challenges that communities have, the challenges that I see happening in Chicago can very well be solved by the folks that are in Chicago, that are in community. So how do we build space, respect, and unity among each other so that we can collectively think about solutions for the future? And so the pillars, three pillars that our organization has stood on, building on for the past 3 years is mentoring. So we run a year-round mentoring program where we match community volunteers with mentees that fit our age demographic and fit our criteria. Employment, we recently started a social enterprise, Southside Prince, which provides quality merchandise and apparel services to other local impact organizations. It also provides transitional employment for the guys that we work with. It's a great paid work experience for them as well. Within this program, they learn Photoshop, Illustrator, how to run a silk screen press. So it looks a lot of different ways. Last summer, we did this program with 12 guys. 2 of the 12 guys came on with us this summer and are junior designers. Some of the guys that we had, one in specifically, Herman Gibson, has went on to Harold Washington College to study photography, more of a traditional route. But whether it's with us, whether it's formal education, or whether you go out and say, I'm going to start my own Shopify website and just get my manufacturing from Chasing23, we see that as an impact. And then community. Community is important. We're looking to work with like-minded folks that have a passion, that have a like-mindedness for the work that we're doing. So since 2016, 65 young guys have gone through our program. It's an onboarding program where we teach social emotional learning. We teach job readiness skills in the 21st century, Google Drive, Google Slides, Google Docs. So how do you walk into a place saying you're using this technology in a way? 65 guys have gone through that program. We're now thinking about how we can take that program to online. Not to say that we'll take away the in-person learning, but we want to think about how we can marry the two and really expand our reach. 15 young men have gone through our social enterprise program. They've been paid a work experience while they've been with us. And they've also learned a trade, a creative trade while with us. Apparel production is one of the things that we do. This year we've tracked 110 hours for our mentors. Really believe in time, really believe in commitment, really believe that, I get a lot of folks that want to come in and like on day one, like, I want to give a presentation to your kids and talk to all you guys and tell them how to get it right. And I ask that they just show up every Monday and they wait for somebody to take a liking to them. And then from there, we'll make that match. And I think that's we're moving along the conversation about mentoring and what does it look like to formally match and informally match participants. And so a plan for growth, again, like this, 10 minutes real quick. But we want to grow our mentoring program, right? We want to think about what does it look like to take our curriculum and put it onto an online platform, spread it out a little bit more. There's a lot of Chicago public schools that we want to work with, a lot of neighborhoods that we want to get to. We want to continue to refine our apprenticeship model, again, because young people come in one way and they leave, whether that's with us as a paid staff person, as a freelancer on their own, or if they go off to be a student as well. We want to think about how we're keeping up with that. And then also, while we're in the process of doing that, we want to grow our customer base for our social enterprise. And then the last thing that I'm passionate about is launching a Chasing23 fellowship. Experiences like this, communities like this affirm something within me that I knew that I had, but I need to affirm something in some young guys that they don't know that they have. And I think opportunities like fellowship, I think words like fellowship, I think that wraps these young men in a certain level of esteem that they need to be all who they want to be. And so that's a little bit about Chasing23. Okay.
It never ceases to amaze me. I'm fairly new to Echoing Green, and I'm looking at Camila because we sit in this room and we deliberate right through all of these applications, and we make those tough decisions about who we can advance and how we can support people that aren't able to advance. And then you sit in a room and you hear someone like yourself tell their story and talk about why they're so passionate about their work and talk about the impact, and it makes the weeks that we sit in this room worth it. The time it really
I know
does,
that feeling.
Right? This is like a full circle moment, and we're just so honored, that you would join us.
I'm grateful as well.
Right? To walk with you on this journey.
Yeah.
So looking forward to this conversation. Thanks to everyone for being here today.
Yeah.
So
let's do it.
Let's do it, right? Okay.
I'm over here from Southside. Get me.
Okay, I'm from the D, so
okay, all right.
Right.
New Yorkers in the room, no shade to y'all. Or whatever metro city you coming from.
Right. So Chasing23.
Yeah.
Right? It's become like this mantra for you. And when we were talking at some point earlier, you were telling me about someone who really impacted your life as a mentor. His name is Wayne Drummer.
Yeah.
And one of the last conversations that you guys had, he just told you to keep chasing that 23, right? So can you talk to us about Chasing23 and what that means? And then also tell us a little bit about Wayne and who he was to you.
Yeah. Great. So if you don't know, I'm from Chicago, right? And Michael Jordan played for a sports team in Chicago, and he made this number 23 really famous. And so now, Chicago Chasing23, it's about Michael Jordan. Yeah. But to a step further, and there was some inspiration there. But it was really inspired by my friend Wayne Drummer, who was just a phenomenal person to me and to the impact that he had on the world. We became friends back in 2012. At the time, I was going back and forth with a felony case that I had in Illinois, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. And right around as I was going through this, this troubling time, kind of with the criminal justice system, I met Wayne, and we would have, these long, deep conversations. It started with initially him helping me out with some of my court fees and my legal documents and things like that. And I would sit and talk with Wayne, and I'm like, man, I'm on probation. I picked up another charge. I'm going to go to prison. And I just had this glass half full, empty view about life. And Wayne saw it a total different way. Wayne saw me as this passionate, you know, kind of like self-motivated guy who was able to, you know, galvanize people and have people around and buy into things. And so that was what Wayne stuck on. Right? He didn't spend any time talking about what I didn't have and my shortcomings, but he like affirmed everything that I was doubting within myself. And we talked a long time, you know, so much so that right as he came up to his 23rd birthday, he was like, man, you know, I'm chasing 23, man. I'm chasing greatness. This is my Jordan year. And, you know, when he was 23, it was just like this thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It sounds nice. On my birthday, which was April 12th, you know, so fast forward a few months, Wayne's birthday was in August in 2012. I went to court this morning and initially was facing 3 years in the Department of Corrections, and went to court that day and was offered a lighter sentence of 3 months and 2 years probation. And I remember walking out the courtroom feeling like this was my second chance. And not only a second chance, as if, you know, there was a kind of opportunity to do it again or need to do it again, but this was really like the moment where I said, okay, you know, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to focus different. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to chase this 23. I'm going to chase this greatness, whatever that thing is that Wayne talked about. I'm going to go after it. And so I'm leaving the courtroom. My wife's with me, and I call Wayne, you know, and I'm calling him, and I'm like, yeah, hey, you know, left out the court. Course gave me a blessing. Think everything's gonna work out. I'm all good. And he's like, yeah, D, I told you, right? Chase that 23, man. Chase that greatness. He was in Florida at the time. Like, man, when I come back, man, you know, we gonna hang out. We gonna do this, that, and the third. And I'm like, man, for sure, let's do it, bro. And man, when I woke up the next morning, I got a phone call from a friend and was told that something had happened, but he didn't know. And so I remember calling Wayne's phone after I got the phone call, my friend, and he didn't answer. And I had lost a few of my friends to gun violence in the neighborhood. So I know that feeling of like calling somebody, they don't answer, then you get like the weight in your stomach. And I was like, man, I don't know. I didn't think nothing of it. I kind of went through my day, and maybe like an hour later, I seen his picture come through my Instagram feed. And it was Wayne Drummer. And so I'm like, man, you know, I go Google it because now I'm saying, you know, RIP and stuff like that. And when I go to Google his name, it comes up, 23-year-old Chicago man fatally stabbed to death. He had been in a domestic violence incident with his girlfriend at the time, and unfortunately, Wayne was the victim of a tragedy. And you know, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was being 6 years old and not having a father, being raised in a single parent home, maybe going in and out of schools and suspensions. And I had just gotten at a point in my life where literally it was like, yeah, you know, I have to figure out something. I got to do something different. I have to literally take a different approach to life. And so Chasing 23 6 years ago became this vehicle for me to put my all into. It was something that I was willing to literally give my all to, and whatever came out of it, I was okay with it. But I just had to have that commitment to giving it my all. Yeah. And at that moment, it you know, 6 years ago, you know, Chicago still had its challenges that it had, but I said, you know, Chasing 23 is going to be the backlight for Gotham City. Right. That young people in Chicago and in our communities will see Chasing 23 and think about hope, redemption, possibility, agency, affirmation. Yes. And so that's what I intended to just go after and build after. And Wayne was a true embodiment of that. And I know right now he's looking down, super proud. This year we started a Wayne Drummer Scholarship for him. Nice. And his legacy will continue to live on through the work that we're doing. Yeah. Wow. Thank you again for sharing about Wayne and that story. I know it's really personal to you. And you know, you talk about like it was just this moment, right? Like for you, where it was just like, I have to do something about it. And you know, at Echoing Green, we call it this moment of obligation, right? Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about when you
you had this background, right?
Yeah.
You understood that there was something you had to do. But when did it click for you that you had to make this your life's work, and you just started putting your feet to the pavement and saying, okay, let's move on this, right? Like, can you talk to us about what that moment was for you?
Yeah. So I think I always, maybe it was because I was the son of a sergeant and a single mom, that I always felt the weight to break generational curses, to be a vessel for world change. And so I sought that out in the world diligently. Even when it seemed naive and I seemed wayward, I always sought that out. And so when I sat in county jail, 6 summers ago, I literally, didn't know fully what it would look like, but was just adamant to know that the change that I wanted to see in the world had to start with me. Yeah. And I just wanted to be the full embodiment of that. Mm-hmm. And so when I left out of that detention center, I immediately went to a local community college, got my GED, enrolled in a 2-year program, earned my associate's degree, ran for student body president, was elected student body president, won unanimously, ran a student club at a community college in the city of Chicago of 65 members, where student clubs and extracurricular activities folks don't do. It's a community college, folks are coming and going. But that wasn't the case with this group that we were a part of. And I remember one advisor coming by one day and saying, man, you are a natural born leader. Tried and true. Like, you just got it on you. It's good. You should wear this. You should go places. You should do things. And I said, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I said, yeah, I was thinking that. Thank you. You're right. I'm gonna go further with that. And I did, and I just went out, and I just never second guessed. Yeah. I didn't let barriers stop me. I didn't see, what was very clear in front of my face. I didn't let it stop me. I started to do motivational speeches. I follow guys like Les Brown and Eric Thomas, so I was inspired in that vein. I'm a person of faith. I come up in churches, so I feel like order, and I knew where that can go somewhere. Right. And so I first started this presentation entitled "From the Inmate to the President." It was right after Barack Obama, and so there was a lot of hype around inmate to the president, right? Like, that was very captivating, and got an opportunity to pitch the workshop, did it around a few local schools, and a school counselor at a neighborhood school that I live at heard me give the presentation, invited me out to their school. I spoke at their school, and from there, Chasing23 grew into a program and has been growing ever since. So again, I put myself in a position to say that, I want to be in front of things. I want to be able to shape things and make things, because at the heart, I feel like I knew the judgment that I had. Yeah. So a part of me was like, I want to be trusted. Right. I want to be entrusted. So how do I get into a space to be trusted? And with that trust, how do I make an impact for the good?
Yeah, and so in an impact you are making, especially in a really tough community, right? Like, so you talk about, in your stats, you talked about it's 309 people, probably more now. Yeah,
unfortunately,
who have died to gun violence and homicide in Chicago. I mean, I was doing research, and just last weekend, right? It was 3 people dead, 22 wounded. The weekend before that, 7 dead, 49 wounded. A girl who was 13 years old was shot, in her home on her couch, right? Like, so when you talk about, like, coming from a community of gun violence and just like gaps in the education system and fatherlessness and joblessness, all of that, right? Like, all of the things that you're looking to solve for. What are your thoughts, just like on a larger systemic viewpoint about how your work is helping to address some of these major issues that we're talking about now, right? Like, what is it that Chasing23 is doing to help change that narrative, right? Because we talk about that. You hear, I mean, I can easily type in Chicago and the first thing that comes up are, exactly, our homicides. but rarely do I hear about anything else that's going on in the community.
Yeah.
And here you are, right, building this movement, but
Yeah.
you said earlier when you introduced yourself that you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Right? So how is Chasing 23 kind of shifting that narrative for the people in your community?
Yeah. So I think it happened two ways for me. And the perspective that I give often is that I look at the work that I do from a micro and a macro level. At a micro level, I really believe that communities can solve the issues that they're struggling with in a way, right, with the right support, that they can do that. And so Chasing 23 as an organization, my hope is that it grows and that it is really just a safety net for community, right? That it's an infrastructure for community, that it can thrive, and when need be, it can help folks that are in need. The other part is that we can't do the work that we do in a silo. Folks need to know about the work that's happening. Folks on the north side of Chicago, folks that are in the West Loop, they need to know about what's happening on the south and west side, what programs are happening, what work is being done at a community level. Because at the outset, folks will say, well, no one cares. The folks there don't care. Policymakers don't. No one cares, right? So we need to be very candid that no, folks care. Folks are really intentionally sacrificing their livelihoods to do this work, and that helps, right? So, why that helps is because public perception shapes policy, and at a macro level, larger conversations need to be had so that the public perception of Chicago isn't that it's doomed, isn't that you can't help it. It's just the way it is, right? This is just how things work. And for me, I was sharing this kind of earlier with Henry, that I'm very intentional about putting myself in the center of conversations, both at a local and national level. Right, whether that's the Obama Foundation and MBK, and me taking my 30 guys in my room and saying, hey, everyone hashtag MBK. And if they don't call us, then we need to figure out something. Right, it's a different type of protest. It's not saying that we're going to the establishment and we're saying they're doing wrong, but they need to know that if they're talking about this topic, that we're here. Where the Aspen Institute comes by and wants to do a story, and it's not that we're fascinated that you want to come do our story, which we are, and we're grateful about it, but it's really sitting time with the editors and getting the story right. That's not what we said. That it was like this, and no, he wasn't homeless. He had a 2-parent home, and we just helped where he was, right? So, like all of these things that people are like, laissez-faire, but no, it does. It really does matter, because your reach is your reach, and again, it shapes public perception. And just the time that we're in now, we're siloed, right? We're just in our back. We're in our own spaces. We're consuming our own media. We're taking in our own narratives. And anytime we can, be in a space where we can challenge those assumptions, where we can think deeper about them, I think that's where the step for real change happens. So those young boys that I work with, they got some things that they need to do, but then there's adults and other folks and other communities that should know about those young people and how they feel, and really just standing in the gap and being a bridge between the two. My hope is that our country, our societies, our communities come together. Collectively, if they're homeless, we really come together and do this. And the only way I think that happens is by standing in the gap and being a bridge for the both. So having great programs at a micro level, empowering community, but at a macro level, being a part of larger conversations, larger topics that can help move the narrative forward, and also just get people to kind of second guess some of the assumptions that they may have. And so you talk about like a larger platform, and we could easily say swap out the city Chicago and put in East St. Louis. We can easily put in Compton. We can easily put in Detroit. Like so many cities are facing a lot of the same issues, right? Particularly around young men of color. The lack of employment opportunities or skills to meet employment opportunities that are criminal justice system
are available. How is Chasing 23 thinking about that, like on a larger scale? Like, is this a model that you're building where you hope or anticipate to replicate in other places with similar demographics?
Yeah, definitely. In my journey, I've started to evolve in my thinking. I came from a very personal, you hear from my story and the work that I do, very, very communal, background. I saw my issue and what was going on in my community, and that was that. I've evolved, I've traveled a bit more, and so now I'm thinking about, what things look like at scale and knowing that, these things are happening in different communities. And so I think a lot of what we're building out is doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's the way in which we build. I think there's two things that I've learned early on. There's failure and then there's learning moments. The difference between failure and learning moments is that you take the failure and you turn it into a learning moment, right? Guys in our print shop, he's working with a t-shirt, he burns it because the dryer, he ran the dryer too long. Failure, you burnt the t-shirt, we need to get it again. Or no, Nathan, who's our operations guy, says, hey, we'll put this in a training manual and next quarter around, right? So it's so in that same vein, what I kind of the conversation that I just had about mentoring, and that we don't pair our mentors and mentees based solely on kind of data that we're looking at from our spreadsheet.
Right.
We're literally creating space, holding space, and allowing relationships to form as they may, which is different from traditional. I mean, it's not how Big Brothers and Sisters does it. So that there is changing how programs are ran, how things are ran, right? Even, the very notion of, who are we involving in programs? I have a criminal record. Right now, I think we're at a conversation where we're saying, okay, folks that have criminal records should be a part of criminal justice reform, right? That makes sense, right? Folks that survive cancer should be a part of cancer research, right? Like it makes sense. But had that been the case, I maybe it has, or what it's looked like in terms of its ownership and evolution, I think is a bit murky. And so, everything I think right now that's being done for me in the organization is a model that can be scaled in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I think any organization in any community can take a step back and say, what do we have? Let's bet on our strengths. Oftentimes we start with what we need, what's short, what gaps we got. What do we have? Let's work from within with that. We have the internet. Right, we have e-commerce. I mean, there's so many different avenues where when I run into folks that are doing work, and the first thing that they say is we don't have a budget. I say you don't have enough passion. It's hard. I mean, it's hard right now, right? With Shopify and Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook ads. I mean, it sell merchandise. I don't know, but like the notion that you have to have a fairy godfather or mother come wave money over your issue to get it going is kind of like an excuse, right? And that's not what we did. We said, what we got? Okay, we got a brand. We'll sell our brand. What we got? Narrative. We got narrative. We'll get in front of that, right? We'll find who's talking about what we're talking about. We'll show up in those spaces. And so I don't have a national model just yet for the best practices and the things that we do. But I think opportunities like this and getting me in a framework, right, where now the work that I do, I don't enter it solely from kind of just this, let me solve this issue here, but I'm, Echoing Green has allowed me, right, to think at a more, global level. Again, the Citi Foundation is looking at youth unemployment globally, right? And now that I know that, I think I'm working in a way to solve that at a larger scale.
Yeah, and so a part of what you said is interesting because you talk a lot about like mentorship and, you come in with this optimism and this positivity, and that's what we look for. Sometimes we sit in these rooms with people who feel the same way we do. But what about the people who are asking questions like, what about the kid who doesn't want the help, right? Like, what about the student who doesn't believe in the same thing that you believe in, right? Because for them, through the trauma or whatever
Yep.
they've been through, they can't really see it. You know, Cornel West talks about this in his book Race Matters, right? I think he titled the chapter, like, I think it's Nihilism in Black America, which is just like, people are so devoid of feeling like there's meaning and hope to their lives because of their circumstances and the situations that they face. How does your work help to like fight against those beliefs that people have now formed because of the world that they live in, right? The communities that they come from.
Yeah. So one, we do trauma-informed care with all of our staff person and all our volunteers, right? Which is the notion, and if I could paint a picture, there's shallow water, there's a person that's drowning in the shallow water. I come along, mentor, you know, person that's got it all together and say, just stand up.
Yeah.
And like, I'm drowning in the water. And I'm like, no, it's shallow water, just stand up and you'll be fine. For the person that's in the water, they don't understand that it's shallow water. Right, this is trauma, right? This is, my father's gone, my mother's struggling with substance abuse, I'm in an 8-family household, right? I don't see this future that you're talking about. I can't see it as shining clear as example of you are, as you are, Darius. That still don't make sense to me. Right. And so we're mindful of that because we're asking our practitioners and our folks on the ground to be patient with these young people, right? Like, I need you to not try to pull them out the water in that first time, but just maybe sit there and say, "You okay? I'll sit here with you until you see that you can stand up," right? And that's what happens, right? Like we can't, you know, I'm always telling the folks that I work with that we can't judge these young people, you know, the full book of their life based on the chapter that we walked in. I just met you at 16. I don't know what you came from. I don't know where you're going, right? So here I am right now. And so when we hold our Monday mentoring circles, this is a space that I'm like boldly curating in a sense of like, if you come with the gun violence, then you got to come with 2 other things that's like positive. Right. You have to give me, you have to bring something else into the space, right? Like we can't come into this half glass empty, right? Like we have to. And this is a space that we're curating, so it's okay with me to challenge them and say, no, you can't come in like that. Like you gotta like go find something, find something. We practice a wheel of life, and in this wheel of life, we're looking at every aspect of your life. We're looking at health, we're looking at environment, we're looking at finances, we're looking at recreation, we're looking at social relationships. And I'm saying, okay, so you don't got no money, so you say at 17, okay, but right, you hung out this weekend, right? Yeah, okay,
right.
You able body, right? You can get up and run, right? You should hold on to those things. And that very thing right there is that I'm creating victors. I'm not creating victims. Yeah. You may have came to me like that, and we'll bandage you up, we'll polish you up, but then there's a passing of the mantle that we got to have with these young guys. Like there's a ownership that comes with that. That's why they see me with my wife and my kids, right? Because they need to know that this ain't just a 9 to 5. This is a livelihood. Like this is something that we're not asking you to put on. We're asking you to like put it in you, like embody it on an everyday basis. Right. And so there's tactical things, staff trainings, right, procedures, team meetings that we do to get folks on board. But then there's also just an expectation that we set within the space that, you know, our young guys know that they showing up positive, right? Like I know Monday mentoring going to come, and I'm going to have to find something good to talk about. I cannot come in with the bad story because, you know, it just doesn't work. And we creating a space where that works, and it grows. You know, we've started to get into a space where we really want to survey the guys that have gone through our program before, and really, you know, what is it? What parts really got you, right? Man, Monday circles, man, just coming, being, showing up, man, mindset, man. We talk a lot about just how you see things, perception and empathy. I got 16-year-olds being empathetic, and for them that day one it was like but now it's like I could be empathetic, and I'm like, yeah, you can. Now let's talk about some money, right? Right, because the soft skills, it's at the heart of things, right? Like all the other stuff, I think you'll figure out again. We're in one chapter of your life. I don't know the full book, but where we're at right now, we're affirming, we're validating, we're putting a responsibility on you. We're telling that you can't hide, you can't duck out. We see you,
Right.
We're looking for you. We're going to come find you. And we're asking you to be fully present when you're with us.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. And so, I mean, I get it. Like, it's this community-based framework, right?
Yeah.
That you're now elevating to a more national level.
Yeah.
Just through being a part of Echoing Green's fellowship and Citi.
Yeah.
What is this vision for you? Like, just looking ahead, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like? I mean, now that you are getting more exposure, I mean, already an Obama fellow and part of, BK and all of that, right? But what does this vision look like for you down the road now that you've got these other platforms that you're navigating?
So that, the one thing is that the organization grows and continue to thrive. If we go 10 years out, well, maybe 7 years out, the organization was started in 2016. By 2026, my hope is that a few of our guys are staff people, program managers. Maybe if some went off to college, come back. Maybe some are professionals, and another right, and they donate to the organization. Right? Like, the hope is that this thing is there and that it's growing, that it's thriving. Yeah. I feel like I fell through the gaps. I feel like we're catching guys that are falling through the gaps. I just hope that net is bigger in a few years, right? So, and what that means, right? Production, social enterprise, all of that. So I hope the organization grows. The second thing for me is that I, very, kind of narcissistic or kind of vain, and I want to amplify my voice as huge as possible, as much as possible. Yeah. Right, as much as I can be a part of, and not saying that I want to dominate the conversation, right? Like, I want to be at the table, everybody's at the table, but want to be able to offer up a perspective that speaks from an experience, but that also brings a level-headedness too, right? Where I can understand where you're coming from, you can understand where I'm coming from, and we can continue to move the buck forward. And so, that's the hope, right? That the organization grows well, that I can continue to grow as a professional and be a part of, conversations, contemporary conversations as they move forward. And all the folks that hit Echoing Green, the ultimate thing for me that I want to do, I ultimately want to serve as the mayor of Chicago. And so, right. So that's there, right? There's a lot of other things that we'll do in between then. But I was born with a purpose. I was born to serve. Yeah. I was born to lead. I was the prayer of single fathers, single mothers, community members. I was the hope for some guys. And I just want to continue to walk in that. And, I didn't know. Me and my wife didn't know where all we would end up, but we're ending up in a lot of different spaces. And I just want to continue to grow and show up. And man, I just really want to be who I believe I can be. Yeah. Right. I'm here. I'm in Chicago, right here in Chicago, doing the work that I'm doing and really grappling with that. But Rachel, anywhere that there's any injustice in the world that I can solve, I want to be a part of it. If it's human trafficking in Middle Eastern, if it's gender equality issues in Europe, if it's climate change in Africa, like anything that I can add to that's a fight for good and righteousness, I want to be a part of those conversations moving forward.
Well, I mean, I don't know what else we can say. So look, we could do this all
night, right? We could.
But I'm sure there are questions that are in the audience, and so I'll go ahead and turn it over to the audience right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate it, man. Really do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can you tell me your name too before you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nissan. Hi, everyone. I'm from Northern Virginia, so not any of the urban cities you guys mentioned.
Cities.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's really fascinating and just encouraging to hear and inspiring. I was curious about how you select the kids that you work with, the young men. Like, how do they sort of get into the program? How does that work out?
Yeah. So we start by neighborhoods. So we're in the south side of Chicago. So predominantly our guys come from the 60653, 60624. So by locality is one. And then there's an age range that we target, 16 to 24-year-olds. And then the third thing is that we're looking for certain just risk factors, whether they're off track to graduate, whether they're justice involved, or whether it could be a parental referral, considering what the case may be. So it's between those three buckets: in a neighborhood, in the age range, and certain risk factors.
So my name is Gordon Skinner.
Gordon.
Native New Yorker.
Awesome.
6 blocks from here. So it's, first off, ideally, you and the work that we do, we want to actually create a society where our work isn't necessary.
Yeah.
And then the conversation becomes one of how do we sustain ourselves.
Yeah.
And you introduced, from your perspective, that it was public opinion that drove policy. I will submit humbly that there is also funding that drives policy, and there's that conversation of which comes first.
Yeah.
So my question is, how does your organization sustain itself in a way that it's not reliant solely on funding?
Yep. So we're in our third year. Majority of our funding has come from private foundations and school contracts, so fee for service. But we've started a social enterprise, our print shop, which we intend to be a revenue generator for the organization, for the work that we're doing. And so that the very short answer is the print shop. That the print shop pays for the fellowship program, that individual donors contribute to the after school program, right? So what donors don't do, the business does. Where the business doesn't go, grants and sponsors will come in between. And I think just traditional non-for-profits weren't built that way, right? Traditional non-for-profits were, hey, we're in community, government, you need us to do something. We do homelessness, but you want to do sexual prevention? All right, we'll do that, right? And so there was this mission creep. So organizations found themselves every fiscal year doing a new program. We were just, we were just different about it. At the outset, we were like, no, streetwear is popping. We'll have streetwear, right? Folks give money. Donations will be very clear about where those donations go, and we'll build from there. And that takes time too, right? So, oftentimes you talk about scale and how things grow. We're like a small giant. We're really taking our time with the thanks to Echo and Green to really be very clear about who are our partners. We had some, foundation partners that last year I would argue really took us off our mission, in this video. But right, so now with Echo and Green, we'll come back and say, hey. We got a true North Star. Here's the folks that are with us. Is this kind of line of not? Then no, right? No. And early, I'm as fortunate because I don't have 10 people on staff that I have, right? So it's allowed that autonomy, and I could just only think just early on being very mindful of that, and I think that's helped sustain the organization. But again, at the very core is that the business grows, and if it isn't print shop, right? I'm finding out what next market that we can build a business in that can have a very strong social mission to it.
What's up, man?
What's up, bro?
My name is Jamar.
Jamar.
I'm from Newark, New Jersey. Growing up, I had about 10 of my friends that died from street violence, right? So
I'm sorry to hear about that.
Not so good. But when I see 309 people, I don't feel anything no more because I had close friends that actually died. So it's it's all the same. It's a million, 309 to 10. So you get to a point where, logically speaking, it's your life don't matter. Just be like an inner city black man, life don't matter. And I feel like that sometimes, but I was able to flip it and say, okay, since my life don't matter, let me go out on my dreams, right? But when you talking to these kids on a one-on-one level, what message have you found that work with them, that connect with them, that convince them that their life is of something about it?
Wow. Yeah, man. It's I think not kind of something that you talked about. I think oftentimes maybe coined as compassion fatigue, right? In some sense, right? You kind of lose touch with things, right? Or you become numb to it. And so that's an interesting thing to grapple with constantly. James Baldwin once said that to be a black man in America, to be a conscious black man in America, is to constantly be in a state of rage, right? You're constantly just oh, what's going on in the society? How I'm gonna fix it? And so I'm so glad that, you know, I came into faith before I became conscious, because I don't know where I would have been in the spectrum of all of that. What is one message that I give to guys that I work with that resonates with them? My story is the one that I'm always leading with. I'm always leading with my personal story. I'm then giving it back and saying, you got your own personal story, right? Like I just told you, the Darius Ballinger version, right? Like you got the K1 Leonard version of it. The other thing is that it's still this time piece. Like I gotta show up, right? Like it ain't no good for me to be like, bro, you could be great, you could do things, and then like, boom, I'm gone. That was what I was doing with the motivational speaking thing, which is why I didn't want to do that anymore. Because I give a 90-minute presentation, I get a couple thousand, and I'm off to the next. And then like kids that I saw that were in that stadium or that in that audience, they ended up in the justice system or on the corner, right? And so that it wasn't a message, bro. I think it is literally the best way I'm seeing change is like literally like walking with these guys, like literally like just changing my livelihood to where they're in the car with me, so that they see it at all times. I think one of my young guys, Sincere, that was with me last summer, who literally, I did programming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Tuesday and Thursday I did admin stuff, and I would have Sincere with me some days. And some days when he's seeing me do admin stuff, he's not seeing the polished Darius on Monday and Wednesday with the agenda and the facilitation notes. He's literally seeing me on the fly, like responding to people and doing this stuff, or like kid stuff, and he's literally like, oh, you just handle it so well. Like, you handling it well. And it's not me talking. This is literally him just observing me and my movement. And he's just like, man, I get it in your movement and in your walk. Right? So I think it's what you say, but then it's also, you know, like the walking the walk, talking the talk thing, man. And so however you can amplify that and let that constantly be seen in their lives, I think will go a lot further than kind of like the ism or the jewel you can give them kind of in that 5 or 10 minute, man, get your life together thing. Like, it's really like, I know you won't, just come ride with me. Come on. Right. Let's go. It's like, we riding. We ain't play no music all day. What is this we listen to? It's a podcast. Keep riding. Like, right? So it's not, I mean, some stuff is like really just witnessing, and then it adds a little awe factor to it too, because now it's like, you don't got to tell me everything. I could watch what you're doing in peep game. I got my journal today too. I'm taking my notes, right? And so you give them that space where they really just, man, these young brothers want to be something that they can see. Yeah. It's really about being, how can you be, like for me, I only wanted to be what I saw. I only looked up to the guys in my neighborhood that drove the fancy cars and that had all the people around them. And so I just aspired to be that. And that brother didn't give me 2-3 many words. I just literally saw him and had my own. And so I'm literally just like my wife, my kids, my family, my organization, and I'm just like there fully present, and they walking away like, I'm probably gonna get married too then, bro. Probably gonna give me a little wife or something too, this might be. And so there it is. Not me saying, Lord, that girl is literally like, I know Deshaun, I know that's DB wife right there. So I think it's just being fully present with them, man. Yep.
What do you find the courage to stay in the area? Because I'm scared to go back sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you find the courage to actually stay there and, like you said, ride out with them, stuff like this? Yeah. Because I was there. Right. I've been there, and I'm not saying it in that. So my wife asks me all the time, right? Like, why Chicago? Or why, like, you want to be the man of Chicago? Why you don't go to Des Moines, Iowa? You'll probably kill it in Rockford. Do you know how you could be the greatest politician in Rockford? Like, why you want to do Chicago? Like, why? You see that map? You see them people? You, like, it's just my life. Could have been born anywhere. Anywhere. I lived in Germany before. My mother was in the military. I stayed in Hanau, Germany, Vicenza, Italy. I've traveled. I was born in Chicago, city of Harold, Washington. All right. And I just took that and I own that. And man, I spent my days doing a whole bunch of other stuff that I could have lost my life doing. And I didn't. So I damn sure lose my life doing this type of stuff. Right. So I'm moving with that type of conviction.
and just go with it, bro.
We have time for just one more question. Of course, it would be Henry.
Of course, it would be Henry. I'll stick around too. So I'm here.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Once again, my name is Henry. I live in Newark now, so I kind of had an idea of what's going on. And I've asked you 20 questions, but when we talk about fellowshipping, I genuinely understand the impact that fellowshipping has on men of color, right? And whether it's fraternity, whether it's brotherhood, whether it's friendship, understanding that fellowship makes a difference in being able to move forward. And it's a vehicle for creating change if you choose for it to be. So, 2 parts. What does fellowshipping look like for you and the group outside of mentorship Mondays or mentor Mondays? Yeah. And how do you manage possibly having to retain people who are transitioning out of the program, meaning either students or even the old, you said, I think, 23 to 44. Yeah. How do you manage the retention of people who can't manage to commit to the program?
Yeah. A few things that I want to lift up. First, I want to lift up one thing that I think fellowshipping is a thing of human nature. Right? I definitely think it's valid for black boys and men, but I think when people are just eating together, hanging together, bonding together, bonds come, right? So that's one. The second thing is that outside of Monday mentoring that we do social outings, and that could look like anything that we find within the city of Chicago within the month of August to do. This month it was the Bud Billiken Parade. Next month it'll be CPS's Young Men of Color Conference. It's the Sox. I think we're doing a Sox game when we come back. So we're literally just finding, again, anything to just be in space, because a lot of it isn't the teachable moments. We got the course for that. We got the curriculum for that. The other part of that is, for these guys, we're the only other peer group they got. So we can't be too much of a program or job that they then say, well, it's not a peer space for me. I can't just kick it with Chasing23. Because when the kick it happens, that's when the real conversation, that's when the real, what was that you said? Let's challenge that, right? And so it really comes, one, we create a space on Mondays, but then the other thing is like, we're just trying to find stuff. I'm not trying to recreate everything that's happening in the city of Chicago, but we're just trying to find spaces that we can show up, and that's inviting. The other thing is managing, which is interesting, managing the volunteers, the 26 to 40 year olds, or kind of that spectrum. And I maybe got that wrong. Maybe got some older brothers that I counted that should be a part of that too. And we've started to have smaller conversations with those volunteer mentors to really think about what it is that they want to do, right? Because they're under the notion too that this idea that black men don't work together, and black people don't do this, and black people don't do that, and and so we're literally creating a space where we coming together and saying, hey, you saw them brothers out of Detroit that put $20 up every 2 weeks, and over 2 years they bought a building. Yep. Like, again, the expectation that we setting with these young guys at 16, we bringing it to the 30, like, bro, like, pause that at the door. Bring in a newness, bring in a freshness, and let's meet you where you at, right? This isn't the Darius show, because that's what you'll think at the outset of it. This is me, but no. Now what we're hoping to do in this next, man, is to figure out how we get into folks' motives, because you could have another thing that you want to do, and we could be a community to do it, but we're just asking you to just be mindful of the next generation while you're in that. So again, that's why we're not bringing folks in, the brother that's working at Deloitte, that got it going on. We ain't saying you got to mentor, Javon for 10 hours a month. No, but we are asking you to show up at least 3 hours a month and just be up in a space and whatever that looks like for you, right? So I think that next part is, and this, it just goes in communication, knowing your audiences and how you're tailoring that message, because at the outset of it, you want to play on the idea of like, they young people. You don't want to mentor nobody, so you want to guilt trip them with that, and then you'll get them to show up. But then the other thing is like, are you a part of any think tanks? Part of any mastermind groups? who else, other spaces you bouncing this off out of outside of the barbershop, which is like conversation while I'm getting my line in and I'm out the door. Right? Like we're like tried and true holding you to that.
Right.
So, you know, figure out what those motives are and just curate those spaces different. With the young people, if you got that with them, keep that going, and then figure out, you know, with them older guys, how does that look so that everybody can have, you know, whatever it is that they are passionate about be amplified. It may come out in scholarship committees. It may be somebody saying, hey, I just want to help us get corporate sponsors, but just figuring out what their deeper interests are, and then being able to speak to those is what has been helping us, and something that we really want to see what it looks like in this next year.
Wow. Well, Darius, what is it?